Good morning, Bucknutters. It is Tuesday, October 27th, 2015. I am Dan Rubin. This is the Bucknuts Morning 5 and Change. Normally at this time, you would hear the dulcet tones of Dwayne Long. Unfortunately, Dwayne is still chasing his quarterback career and is going under the knife today for some shoulder surgery. So we had to bring in an expert, someone you all know and love, the one and only Dave Biddle. That's what everyone needs, more Dan and Dave. Dave, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Dan. I just wish I wasn't here under bad circumstances with our buddy Dwayne going under the knife. So get well soon, Dwayne.
Yeah, hopefully it's better for him. Dwayne has had some medical issues in the recent past, but it sounds like he's on the way to recovery, and this is kind of just a cleanup job. So Dave and I are going to have some fun today. We're going to give you some, the bye week is here, so there's nothing super pressing. So we're going to go back and forth here and give you some predictions for the rest of the season. I have 4 and Dave has 5. So we're going to start with Dave. He's going to give a prediction for the rest of the season. He and I are going to vamp about it. We're going to go from there. I think it should be probably pretty interesting. Definitely one of those things you want to hold on to and write down so you can come back at us and none of this happens later on. Dave, prediction number 1 for the rest of the season.
Oh, I think the Buckeyes are going to make the college football playoff for the second straight year, but I think they're going to lose in the semifinals. And I don't know who they're going to lose to. I just have this feeling that they're going to get through the regular season unscathed. The last 2 games of the regular season are going to be tough. They're going to win the Big Ten championship game. They're going to be feeling great about themselves. And I just have this feeling they're going to get to the college football playoff and lose in the semifinal. I hope I'm wrong. I think Ohio State definitely has the capabilities to go 15-0 and win it all. But I just have this feeling, Dan, that they're going to get close, but not quite close enough. They're going to lose in the semifinal.
As the season goes on, I start to, size up the opponents. Who do you think, if you had to name, the 3 schools that scare you? I know you didn't say, you don't know who will be, and obviously if it's the playoff, there's some variables. But who are the 3 teams out there that really scare you when it comes to the Buckeyes?
Well, I think a tough matchup would be a rematch against Alabama because you have the revenge factor on Alabama's side. I think it would be very tough to beat them 2 straight years in the college football playoff. And Clemson's been the most impressive team, and I think everybody's waiting for Clemson to kind of pull a Clemson, do the Clemsoning, and fall off the map. I don't think that's going to happen. I think Deshaun Watson's established himself as one of the best quarterbacks in the nation. It's easy to see why Urban Meyer and Tom Herman wanted him so much, went after him so hard, really had to settle for Stephen Collier when that fell through. I like what I'm seeing out of Clemson. I think they're going to make the college football playoff. So Clemson and Alabama are 2 teams I think would be very tough for Ohio State. I think the other team that's going to get in is TCU. I wouldn't be scared at all to play them. And I would have picked Baylor before Seth Russell was out for the season with an injury. I know their backup quarterback is good, but he's not Seth Russell. So I'm picking TCU as that 4th team to get in. But the 2 main teams I'm looking at are Clemson and Alabama.
I would agree with that. To me, Clemson's been super impressive, and the thing that makes me scared about them is that their quarterback is the guy that Urban really wants, and that bothers me. Okay, I'll go with mine. Here's my final 4. This is my first prediction. I have Ohio State, Alabama, Stanford, and TCU. While I think Clemson's impressive, there's too much Clemson there for me. I just can't believe they can put it together for the whole season. I think there's going to be a loss here soon. I don't know if it'll be Florida State, but I just have a feeling Clemson's going to lose. So I have Ohio State, Alabama, Stanford, and TCU. And like you, I actually would have had Baylor in there before the injury. That said, the guy Baylor's putting in, I don't know if you've seen him play, Jarrett Stidham is a stud, so that's to be determined. But I still think it's an Alabama-Ohio State final, and I think Ohio State will win, and that's obviously wishful thinking. Prediction number 2. From Dave Biddle.
Ohio State will finish with the number 1 recruiting class in the nation. That's not a huge surprise. They're ranked number 1 now, but LSU is closing fast. LSU actually jumped Ohio State briefly, but Ohio State is back number 1. Whether or not they hold on to Kareem Walker will be big for recruiting rankings. I tend to think he's going to go elsewhere, but Ohio State is still going to hold on to the number 1 ranking because they're going to finish strong. They have a lot of guys that are right on their heels, a lot of teams that are right on their heels, LSU, Florida State, Penn State, and Alabama. But I do think Ohio State, for the first time in the Urban Meyer era, they're going to finish with the number 1 recruiting class. They've had a number 2 class, a number 3 class, a couple number 5 classes, but I think this is the year they're going to finish with the number 1 recruiting class in the land.
I agree. I'll take that a step further. I believe this is the first of 3 straight years they'll finish number 1. I do think they'll finish number 1. I'm going to kind of try and tie in my predictions here to the ones Dave has made. I don't think Kareem Walker will be part of this class. I've just been through this rodeo too many times to see a guy like that end up in the class. the quickness with which they went after Antonio Williams leads me to believe there's just a vibe in the Meyer camp to not go through the Deshaun Watson syndrome again, where they did with the quarterback the first time he was here, so I don't think that will happen. I do think, however, that two people that will be in the class, Benjamin Victor, and then there will be a defensive tackle in the class who we don't know about now, who is currently committed elsewhere, because I think it's pretty obvious the team needs some replenishment at defensive tackle. Malik Barrow is even injured in this class, and I don't believe they're going to get Antoine Jackson or any of the other big guys, so there should be a new name in there, and I think Ohio State's going to go after a committed defensive tackle, almost in the way they went after Antonio Williams, who was committed to Wisconsin. Dave Biddle, prediction number 3.
This is not a big surprise, but J.T. Barrett will keep the job for the rest of the year. I think pretty much every Buckeye fan would agree with that, but I did want to throw that out there. It's been the biggest topic of conversation in Buckeye Nation throughout the offseason, and then through the first half of the season. I think they have finally found their answer. I do not see J.T. Barrett giving up this job, Dan. He's just looking so good. To me, he looks even better than he did last year. We need a larger sample size for that to really, for that to be factual. He's only had one start this year, but he looks quicker to me, which is amazing considering the fact he's less than a year removed from breaking his ankle against Michigan. And I do think J.T. Barrett will hold on to the job the rest of the year. I think Cardale Jones will go pro after this season.
I completely agree. I did a prediction show earlier on, actually before the season, with Alex Lightman, and clearly before they chose the quarterback, and I predicted JT would win the Heisman Trophy. If you look at his statistics over the last 2 weeks, I hold to that. I'm going to be very interested to find out in Urban's next book with Billy Rabinowitz or whoever he does it with about what went into this decision. But I agree. It's JT's team. I don't know if I've ever seen a team's attitude across the board. Attitude might not be the word, or just the team vibe pick up when some guy comes in the game. I don't know why that is, but it's certainly apparent. All right, here's my next prediction. Ezekiel Elliott will be in New York and finish second in the Heisman Trophy voting to Leonard Fournette. I came close to thinking or to predicting EZ would win it. I just don't think the public momentum will be strong enough, and I think Fournette's going to have some major, television appearances to get this done. I think Fournette would obviously have to have a huge game against Alabama to do it. What do you think? EZ Elliott have a chance to win the Heisman, or is he guaranteed, or at least destined right now to be a silver medalist?
I'm right with you. I think he has a chance. I think picking him second is a good prediction right now because Fournette clearly has a big lead. You have some people in the national media that already want to give the award to Leonard Fournette, but there's a couple things that could happen. Injuries could play a role here with either guy. Ezekiel could get hurt or Fournette could get hurt. That's obviously something that could happen. Or Fournette could all of a sudden face some tough defenses like Alabama where his stats go the other way, and Ezekiel could finish the season very strong. And if he finishes the season strong against a Michigan State defense, an excellent Michigan defense, Big Ten championship game against a good Iowa defense, if it works out that way, I definitely think people are writing Ezekiel off too early. I think he could finish the season strong and definitely get back in the race. I saw the Vegas odds came out yesterday. Kevin Ryan from 24/7 did a story. Ezekiel's third right now according to the Vegas odds, so it's not like he's out of it. But if you listen to some of the national pundits, people are not even mentioning his name, which is weird. So I'm with you. I think Ezekiel still has a chance, even though he's not the preseason favorite like he was coming into the year. He's not the favorite anymore, but I do think he still has a strong chance.
I think he's the only one that can catch Fournette based on the way it's set up. So it'd definitely be good to have some Heisman representation in New York. He deserves it, no question. My hope is the closer we get to the playoffs, people will remember that Easy is a been there, done that guy. So they'll kind of give him the benefit of the doubt, but we shall see. Prediction number 4 for Dave Biddle.
I think the Rushman package for Ohio State's defense, that will become the bread and butter for the defensive line when the stakes are the highest. When the chips are in the middle of the table, they're not going to mess with who's our one tech. Are we going to throw Joel Hill out there to get a start, and he's going to get pushed around? Then we're going to put Mike Hill in there. He's not going to get the job done. We're going to throw some other guys in there. No. They know who their top 4 defensive linemen are. When this Rushman package is out there, it's effective. Sam Hubbard at defensive end, Joey Bosa at defensive tackle, Adolphus Washington and Tyquan Lewis don't move at all. They stay on their normal spots at defensive tackle and defensive end. I mean, Adolphus goes to the one tech, but still, you have Bosa and Washington in there together. They can move around. I don't think when those guys are in there together, it's not really Adolphus is the one tech, Joey's the three tech. They're going to move around and do all kinds of things. The point is you need to get your best four linemen on the field, especially when the one tech, no one stepped up. Tommy Shutt was doing okay, then he got hurt, but he wasn't even playing that good, let's be honest. And then his backups aren't getting the job done at all. So, I mean, Joel Hill got the start against Rutgers. They couldn't pull him out of there fast enough. And then Mike Hill wasn't getting the job done either. So, Dan, I think by the end of the year, by the Michigan State and Michigan game, we're going to see a lot more of that Rushman package with Sam Hubbard at defensive end and Joey Bosa at defensive tackle.
Yeah, it almost seems like they're holding it back because they don't want anyone to see it because it's so freaking dominant. That's kind of, I don't know if it's a trump card approach or something like that, but we haven't seen as much of it thus far as I thought we would. I don't know why that is. I hope because they're saying it, because the few times you've seen it, it's absolutely ridiculous. Do you think there's a point down the road where they could start that foursome, or do you think they'll always have kind of a plugger in there in the middle?
I think they probably won't start a game that way. I think they'll, by the end of the season, they'll have Shutt back and they'll put a big club on his hand and he'll get in there and try and do what he can for the first series. And then if the first series goes well, maybe they'll stick with him. But I think, late in those games or when, there's a big drive in those games, even if it's early in the game, they're going to rely a lot more on the Rushman package. But I do not think they're going to start a game with it. I would love to see that. I would love if they did that. I hope they do that, but I do not think that they will do that.
Yeah, I would too. It's kind of like a fast break approach to the game. I'd like to see them try and get teams on their heels, but we shall see. It's something definitely to look forward to. Here's my final prediction. I'm going to do 4 days, I'm going to do 5, so here's my fourth. It's kind of a weird one. There are 2 redshirt sophomores on Ohio State. One of them is Darron Lee, which, by the way, I know that he's a redshirt sophomore, but I looked at that in the roster today, and I still can't believe he's only a redshirt sophomore. And Garyon Conley, and here's my prediction. By the end of this year, the NFL interest in both of them will be extremely high. I've said this on the radio and on the Bucknuts 90 and here before. I think the opposing defenses have already decided that Conley is the number one corner. They never go after him in pressure situations unless forced to. I think both will have a tremendous opportunity to go to the NFL, but I think both will come back and be the focus and the kind of the key guys, the captains for next year's defense. Thoughts?
It's amazing what's happened with Garyon Conley and Eli Apple. Coming into the year, everybody was wondering about Garyon Conley. Is he going to be physical enough? How is he going to tackle? Because there was a very small sample size of at Michigan State last year. We're talking not just one game, one series of one game. He didn't look good. So Buckeye fans, Garyon Conley's no good because of one series of one game. He has played tremendously, I agree with you, and Eli Apple has not played well. Coming into the year, the concern was from Buckeye fans, Eli Apple would be the one to leave early after his third-year sophomore season. And I think both those guys will come back. Both corners will come back next year, but it won't surprise me if Conley leaves as well as he's playing. And Darron Lee, he's been a little banged up. I thought it was a foregone conclusion that this was going to be his last year. Now I'm starting to think he's going to come back. We'll see, but that's only because his leg's been a little banged up. Ohio State's not saying anything about that, so a little inside information for the listeners out there. But Darron Lee has been toughing it out. He's been playing through it. The bye week came at a great week for him, so a great time for him. So I could see him finish the season strong and going pro. That's what I thought coming into the year because he was so unbelievably good last year. We talked to people, opposing coaches who said he was the best player on Ohio State's team, period, offense or defense, last year on the national championship team. So I thought he was going to go pro entering this year. Now I tend to think he's going to come back. There's some rumblings. His mom wants him to come back, stay in school for 4 years, even though he'd be a fourth-year junior, then go pro. We'll see what happens. But if he's projected as a late first-round pick, I think you have to go if you're Darron Lee. I think even his mom would agree with that. So we'll see. I could see your prediction coming true, but I'm going to say that I'm going to disagree with you on that. I'm not playing radio here. I really feel like Conley's going to come back and Lee's going to come back if I had to guess right now. All right, my fifth and final prediction on the show here, I'm going to say Jaylen Marshall is not just going to return one for a touchdown on punt returns. He's going to have 2 punt return touchdowns to finish the season out. Right now, Jaylen Marshall is ranked 19th in the country in punt returns, averaging 13.4 yards per return. But most of the guys ahead of him have returned a punt for a touchdown, which has really skewed their numbers. Jaylen Marshall's getting the job done, and he hasn't broke an extremely long one. He's had a few that have been very impressive. His longest is 38 yards. I love Jaylen Marshall as a punt returner. I think he's on the verge of breaking one, so I'm going to say he's going to break 2. He's going to finish the year as one of the top punt returners in the nation as far as statistically. He's going to be top 5. He's going to have 2 touchdowns down the stretch this year.
That's a great prediction. I thought he had one last week, and it had that feeling. I will say this, every time his heels are on the 40, I think he's going to the house. I think he's got that vibe in him that you can tell he sees it's an opportunity to get it done and has done a great job. It would be nice to see Jaylen pick it up for the rest of the season. He's had some nice plays, but I don't think he's developed into the weapon that at least I thought he'd be. How about you?
Yeah, it's tough to say. He's not getting the touches offensively, I think, to really make that determination. If he was getting more involved in the offense like he will be next year, like he will be, his senior season, I think he's going to be everything and more that Buckeye fans hoped he would be. It's just on this offense, Dan, it's so tough. Look at a guy like Curtis Samuel. They talked all offseason. Urban Meyer himself talked all offseason. We got to get the ball to Curtis Samuel. We got to get him the ball. The days of him touching the ball 5 times a game are over. Well, they have so many weapons on this offense. They're not even getting Curtis Samuel the ball as much as they want. They're not getting Jaylen Marshall the ball as much as they want. So I think Jaylen Marshall is developing exactly how Ohio State wants him to. He's a big piece of the national championship team. You look at how well he played in the postseason last year. He made some big catches, some big punt returns, and I think he's right on track. And what I'm seeing as a punt returner, I love out of him, like I said. And offensively, I think he's going to continue to step up more and more. But I think, again, it's a lack of touches with him. I think when he gets the ball, he does a lot of damage.
There you have it. We appreciate Dave adding a day to his morning routine. You can go now be Mr. Dad, as I'm going to be. We hope these predictions, most of them were good, so let's hope a lot of these come true. We'll have this up on the site for you shortly. Go Bucks.